At 1:47 a.m. in the morning, Elias accepted a fare to a road that had been closed for 10 years. The passenger in the back seat said only one thing: "Please do not take the highway." Elias had been driving a taxi for almost 14 years. He had driven drunk businessmen home after midnight. He had driven anxious mothers to hospitals. He had driven students, tourists, couples fighting in the back seat, and people who never said a word for the entire trip. But there was one passenger he never forgot. Not because of what the man said, because of where he wanted to go. It happened on a Tuesday night in late winter. The city was quiet, cold, and covered in a thin mist that reflected the streetlights in long yellow lines across the road. Elias had planned to stop working early. It had already been a slow night, and he had only enough fuel left for one more trip before heading home. At 19:47 a.m. in the morning, his taxi app showed a pickup request. The location was an old bus stop near the industrial side of town. Elias almost ignored it. Nobody waited at that bus stop anymore. The factories around it had closed years ago, and after midnight the entire area was empty. Even during the day, it was the kind of place people avoided, but the fare was unusually high. The destination was listed as Blackwood Road. Elias stared at the screen for a few seconds. Blackwood Road had not existed for over 10 years, at least not officially. A landslide had destroyed most of it after heavy rain. Several houses had been abandoned. The road was closed, and the entire area was blocked off behind a rusted security gate. Most people in the city knew the story. A family had died there during the landslide. A husband, a wife, and their teenage son. The newspapers called it a tragic accident. But people who lived nearby remembered something different. They remembered that the taxi driver who had taken the family home that night had disappeared. His car was found 3 days later near the damaged road, empty. No driver, no passengers. Just mud inside the back seat and one wet shoe on the floor. Elias had heard the story when he first started driving. Every taxi driver had, he told himself, it was only an old superstition. A story used to scare new drivers, so he accepted the trip. The bus stop appeared ahead through the mist. At first, Elias saw nobody, just the cracked pavement, the old metal bench, and a faded sign leaning to one side. Then he noticed a man standing beneath the streetlight. The man wore a dark coat and carried no bag. He looked to be in his 40s, maybe older. His face was pale but not sickly, more like he had not slept in a very long time. Elias unlocked the doors. The man opened the rear door and climbed in. He did not greet him. He did not ask how long the trip would take. He simply sat behind Elias and said one sentence: "Please do not take the highway." Elias looked at him through the rear-view mirror. "Blackwood Road?" he asked. The man nodded. Elias forced a small laugh. "You know that road is closed, right?" The man looked out the window. "It was closed after I left." Something about the way he said it made Elias stop smiling. He started driving. For the first few minutes, neither of them spoke. The taxi moved through empty streets, past closed shops and dark apartment blocks. The rain became heavier, tapping softly against the roof. Elias kept checking the rear-view mirror. The passenger had not moved. He sat perfectly still, staring out the side window. Then Elias noticed something strange. The man was not reflected in the mirror. Elias blinked. He adjusted the mirror slightly. The back seat was visible. The dark coat was visible. But where the man's face should have been, there was only darkness. Elias felt his hands tighten around the steering wheel. He told himself it was the angle, the rain, the bad lighting. Anything but what his mind was trying to suggest. Then the passenger spoke again. "Do you remember the old yellow taxi? Number, it had a crack in the dashboard," the man continued, "near the radio." Elias looked down. There was a crack in his dashboard, a thin line running beside the radio. It had been there since he bought the taxi secondhand. The passenger leaned forward slightly. "You bought this car from a man named Victor, didn't you?" Elias did not answer. His heart began pounding. Victor had owned the taxi before him. Victor had sold it cheap, years ago, saying he was leaving the city. Elias had only met him once. The passenger's voice became quieter. "Victor was the driver who took us to Blackwood Road." The taxi drifted slightly across the lane. Elias corrected it quickly. "What did you say?" The man behind him did not answer immediately. Then he said, "He told us the road was unsafe. My wife told him to turn back. My son was crying, but Victor kept driving." Elias's mouth went dry. He remembered the story now. The family that died in the landslide, the missing taxi driver, the abandoned car, the wet shoe. The passenger continued, "We were almost home when the road collapsed." Elias looked in the mirror again. This time, he saw something on the floor behind him. Dark, wet mud spreading slowly across the carpet beneath the passenger's shoes. Elias slammed the brakes. The taxi stopped in the middle of the empty road. He turned around. The back seat was empty. No passenger, no coat, no mud. For a moment, Elias sat frozen. Then his phone buzzed. A new message appeared on the taxi app. Destination updated. The route changed. It no longer pointed toward Blackwood Road. Instead, it directed him toward an address he recognized. A small house near the edge of the city. Elias had driven there before. It belonged to Victor, the former owner of his taxi. Elias stared at the address. Then, despite every part of him screaming to go home, he started driving. Victor's house was dark when Elias arrived. The front gate was open. The porch light flickered. Elias remained in the taxi for almost 10 minutes, watching the house through the rain. Then he saw movement behind the front curtain. A figure Victor was standing inside. Elias got out of the taxi and walked to the door. He knocked once. Nothing. He knocked again. The door slowly opened. Victor stood there in an old gray sweater, looking thinner than Elias remembered. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Then Victor looked past Elias toward the taxi. His face changed. He became pale. "Where did you pick him up?" he whispered. Elias felt cold all over. "The old bus stop," he said. Victor stepped backward. "No," he said. No. I stopped picking people up there years ago." Elias looked at him. "You knew him?" Victor stared at the taxi. Then he began to shake. "I knew all of them." Elias did not understand. Victor closed his eyes. "That night," he said, "I was supposed to take the family home, but I had been drinking. I was late. I took the old road because it was faster." Rainwater dripped from Elias's jacket. Victor continued. "The road collapsed. The taxi rolled into the ditch. I woke up outside the car. I could hear them inside calling for me." His voice broke. "I ran." Elias stared at him. "You left them there." Victor looked down. "I told myself I would get help, but I was scared. I had alcohol in my system. I knew I would lose everything." Elias felt anger rise in his chest. "You left them to die." Victor looked at the taxi again. "They didn't die immediately," he whispered. For a moment, the only sound was rain against the roof. Then Victor reached into his pocket and pulled out an old photograph. It showed a family standing beside a yellow taxi. A man, a woman, a teenage boy, and Victor, much younger, standing beside the driver's door. But something else was in the photograph. A fourth passenger, a man in a dark coat standing behind the family. The same man Elias had picked up. Victor saw Elias looking. "He wasn't in the car," Victor said. "Not that night." Elias looked at the photograph again. The dark-coated man was staring directly at the camera. Victor's voice became almost silent. "He has been coming back ever since." Suddenly, the taxi horn began blaring. Elias turned around. The taxi doors were locked. The headlights flashed on by themselves, and in the back seat, the passenger was sitting exactly where he had been before. Still silent. Waiting, Victor began backing away from the door. "No," he whispered. "He came for you, not me." Elias looked at him. "What?" Victor pointed toward the taxi. "The road takes one driver at a time." The passenger slowly raised one hand. He pointed toward the empty front seat. Elias stepped backward. The taxi app opened on its own. A new trip request appeared. Pickup location, Victor's house. Destination, Blackwood Road. Victor screamed. The front door slammed shut behind him. Elias heard locks clicking from inside. The taxi horn stopped. The back door opened. The passenger was gone. For a few seconds, Elias stood alone in the rain. Then his phone buzzed one final time. A message appeared on the screen. "Driver assigned." Elias looked toward Victor's house. The porch light went out. Inside the taxi, the meter started running. And somewhere far beyond the city, beyond the rusted gate and the broken road, headlights flickered in the darkness, waiting for the next passenger. Thanks for watching the final statement. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more dark mysteries and unsettling stories. And tell me in the comments, would you have accepted the fare?